Colorado, your ballots go out tomorrow. Your poll results arrive tonight. Our first look at new 9 News polling of Colorado's Senate race, one of the most closely watched in the country, plus the race for president in our state and key ballot measures. The airport's running out of renovation money, just as it gets to the part of the project that was needed for security. There is reason for caution, not concern, in Colorado's COVID-19 numbers, as college students tell us how they're fighting misplaced blame over the pandemic. And a return to a favorite tradition around here, faux political ads that sound so ridiculous they almost seem real.
A choice between courage and cowardice.
If you're not sure whether to laugh or cry, do both. Next. Colorado appears less of a swing state and more of a state that's already swung in a new 9 News ColoradoPolitics.com poll that we are showing you for the first time now. President Trump is running well behind his 2016 numbers in Colorado, and he's dragging down Republican Senator Cory Gardner along with him. By wide margins, Coloradans do not like the president's handling of the pandemic, and they think the Democratic Governor Jared Polis is doing it the right way. Now, polls are not predictors of what will happen on election night. They're a snapshot in time, and this one is a stark picture for Republicans. Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
Our 9 News Colorado Politics poll, conducted by Survey USA, interviewed 1,021 registered Colorado voters, Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated, who said they were likely to vote. Who would they pick for U.S. Senate if they filled out their ballot today? 48% would pick Democratic challenger John Hickenlooper. 39% would re-elect Republican Senator Cory Gardner. The gap is similar when asked who would they pick for president today. 50% for Democratic candidate Joe Biden, a 10-point lead over President Trump. The interviews took place the first week of October. They started after the first presidential debate, before President Trump tweeted that he and the First Lady tested positive for COVID-19. And the interviews continued through his stay at Walter Reed Medical Center and even after he returned to the White House. On the topic of COVID-19, 58% disapprove or strongly disapprove of the president's response to the coronavirus. 39% approve or strongly approve. For comparison, we also asked voters what they thought of Democratic Governor Jared Polis's response to COVID-19. Polis received 61% approval, 31% disapprove of the governor's response. When asked if a replacement for Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg should be considered before or after January's presidential inauguration, 42% said before, 50% said after. Interestingly, 15% of Democrats said it should happen before, and 15% of Republicans said it should happen after. When we just look at unaffiliated voters, 35% said before the inauguration, and 55% said after.
How about one more quick hit? We asked the voters which issue is the most important this election. We gave 4 options. About half said the economy. A far second at 21% was social justice. The interviews were done online with metro area voters, voters in Colorado Springs and the Western Slope. For more on our methodology and to nerd out on all of the numbers like I like to do, head to 9news.com. Kyle.
And Marshall, there's a lot more to get into, so we're going to bring you back later in the program to look at some of those ballot issues. But kind of returning to the headline about where the presidential race stands in our state and where that closely watched Senate race stands in our state. The thought was that for Republican Senator Cory Gardner to hold on to his seat, that he'd need President Trump to do about as well as he did in Colorado against Hillary Clinton, and then Gardner would have to significantly outperform him. Looks like Trump's doing worse and Gardner's having trouble kind of separating.
I mean, that's the key line for Cory Gardner. He has to secure the base, which would also be voting for President Trump, and then take some of those unaffiliated voters and do better than President Trump. There's some ballot issues that we've talked about before that we'll talk about later in this show that might get some of those more conservative voters to return a ballot that maybe they otherwise wouldn't.
All right. Marshall, we'll talk again soon. There are some new warning signs in Colorado's COVID-19 numbers. Hospitalizations are at their highest level since July, though they're well within hospital capacity. We see the positivity rate ticking up, and case counts have now kind of plateaued at an elevated level. We are testing a lot more, so you're going to find a lot of cases that way. Today, Tri-County Health warned people in Adams, Arapahoe, and Douglas counties that all 3 are in danger of new restrictions if they can't get a hold of rising case counts. Masks, distance, hand washing. We got this. What we could do without, though, is the misplaced blame about the pandemic. when two CU Boulder students who grew up in Colorado noticed increasing racism toward the Asian community in Boulder, they decided to do something about it.
The CU Boulder students were stunned.
Racism during COVID-19, and I was like, people, like, that's a thing that people think Asians, Asian Americans and Asians all over the world caused COVID-19.
They were stunned that COVID-19 was being used as a conduit for racism. Then the uncomfortable encounter started. For Caitlin, it was on a bus at the beginning of the pandemic before masks were a part of everyday life.
And then she looked over at me and saw that I was Asian. And then she proceeded to put like her shirt over her face. I never experienced racism directly.
Then there's what happened to Kimberly's friend in the grocery store.
Someone whispered a racial slur under their breath as they passed her.
So a group of CU Boulder students started the Unmask the Racism campaign. Their social media makes people think twice before using insensitive names for COVID-19, names even used by politicians.
When you put blame on a region and group of people, it's kind of inappropriate because you shouldn't be blaming them, and it causes stereotypes.
And talks about how supporting local businesses plays an important role.
A sense of home for the people who are from those cultures. They bring new experiences to people who have not been able to travel there before. And they also add to our local economies, as these are local entrepreneurs, and many of them are often immigrants who just started their own businesses.
It's easy to scroll through posts and hit the like button, but it's what you do after that these students are the most interested in.
Taking account your personal biases, it's you as an individual saying, okay, what more can I do? What can I learn to help someone in this cause, whether it is environmental, racial, injustice.
For Next, I'm Anusha Roy.
The Anti-Defamation League is tracking these incidents nationwide, and they're worried that they're underreported. So let's talk about what people can do. The students in Boulder point to a pretty simple idea: patronize Asian-owned businesses in our community. Denver International Airport's big renovation project was kind of pitched like the way you do a meal to your kid. Eat your vegetables, and you can have some cake. So we need to upgrade the vulnerable security area at the airport, but in return, travelers would get some goodies like a new Great Hall where they could socialize, and more amenities at the airport, more conveniences. Here's the situation. We bought and ate the cake first, and now we're out of money for our vegetables. Airport leaders gave an assessment of the situation to Denver City Council recently, and the project's broken down into two phases. We've talked about this. You got phase one, which was your dessert, wider balconies, more restrooms, central ticket lobby. Then phase two came the vegetables, relocating the security checkpoints so that somebody can't walk all the way into the interior of the airport with something dangerous before the first time they get stopped. $600 million of the $770 million budget has been spent, and they have not touched phase two, vegetables. So now DIA does not have the money to fix the security issue, which was kind of the whole reason for embarking on this mess to begin with. We asked the airport's chief of staff how they plan to complete the project the best they can without compromising security.
Security is and always will be an important part of this project. And we are not going to scrimp on people's safety. And we will make sure that whatever we build is a quality product that absolutely reduces the vulnerability and continues to make that checkpoint safer, no matter what.
DIA says it's considering some alternative options, like keeping the security checkpoints where they are in the Great Hall and then just trying to better protect them, or perhaps relocating one of the three checkpoints. Hey, there was a technical issue yesterday that meant that many of you were not able to watch this show live, which I only bring up because I don't want you to miss out on what we're doing with our Word of Thanks microgiving campaign this week. That's a big Wednesday tradition around here. We're helping Safe House Denver fight the domestic violence that will affect 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men. They run the 24/7 crisis line where they strategize with people about how they can get out of dangerous situations. And they also run an emergency shelter to house families once they're out and safe. Safe House Denver has lost $42,000 in victims' assistance fees this year because courts were closed down for a while. So we're going to see if we, together, you, me, everybody, can close that $42,000 funding gap and help fight domestic violence. Text the word thanks to 303-871-1491. I'll shoot you that link to donate. Steve Steger's getting in on the fun, and between the two of us, we're going to match the first 100 $5 donations that come in this week. Would love if you're able to help. Let's dive back into our Fresh 9 News polling to see what Coloradans think about the ballot issues before us. It includes one real surprise when you consider how the issue's done in the past. And a neighborhood sees a man in need.
You know, I've never seen Paul shed a tear until that day.
It brought out some of the best in our state. Next.
We continue our look at the 9 News ColoradoPolitics.com poll with a few surprising results in statewide ballot races. Proposition 115, prohibiting an abortion after 22 weeks, is most surprising because voters in Colorado have voted down abortion restrictions a half dozen times. Throughout our poll, 42% are certain to vote yes to prohibit abortions after 22 weeks unless the woman's life is in danger. 45% said no. 13% are uncertain. Kyle, when I look at it by party affiliation, 2/3 of Republicans say yes. Almost 2/3 of Democrats say no. It's the unaffiliateds. 35% yes, 51% no. And unaffiliateds are known to skew more liberal or Democratic thinking, but that doesn't really mesh with that poll result there.
Yeah, it's that undecided split that's really interesting, Marshall, because as you said, this idea of abortion rights or personhood or however they want to cast it has come up again and again. And typically, not only has that been a losing proposition on the ballot in Colorado, but it's lost by enormous numbers. Lost by 30% in 2014, lost by 40% in 2010, 40% in 2008. And as far as we know, that's the first public polling on the anti-abortion measure.
Now, we heard from both the for and against. There's some internal polling they didn't want to share. I talked with the for group who said they just didn't want to share polling that they've had, whether that means they really do have polling or not, but this is the first, as you say, public. And you've mentioned before, Kyle, that sometimes issues like these help get people to vote in an election that maybe they would sit out, but there's an issue they want, so there's going to be a candidate they may help. That makes this a little more interesting as well.
Yes, indeed. What else you got?
Well, here's an issue state lawmakers have tried and failed to approve over the last few years. Proposition 118 creates a paid family and medical leave program that would be paid through a payroll tax, half by you as the employee and half by your employer. 57% are certain to vote yes, 21% no, 22% are not certain. And then Proposition 113 proves that lawmakers don't always have the final say. For the first time since 1932, Colorado voters will decide if a bill passed by the legislature and signed into law by the governor will actually take effect. Proposition 113 is about joining the National Popular Vote Compact. That's split. 39% support, 38% do not, 23% not certain. Again, the national popular vote would tie our 9 electoral college votes to the presidential candidate who gets the most votes nationwide. It would not take effect this year, even if it were to pass, and it wouldn't take effect until enough states agree to the compact. And there's one issue that proves we on Next have our work cut out for us as we guide you through your ballot starting next week. Amendment B is the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment. And what we've learned from the poll is that we need to tell you what the Gallagher Amendment is in the first place. Again, 61% of those interviewed have no opinion, so clearly the undecideds will decide this. The Gallagher Amendment keeps a constant ratio for property tax rates. Residential property makes up 45%, non-residential 55%. To keep that ratio in place, residential assessment rates continue to drop, meaning lower residential property taxes and perhaps not as much money for school districts, police, fire, and libraries. Well, we'll get into the details of a yes and no vote next week, but just know you'll be deciding on if you want your property tax assessment rate to continue to drop and the fallout from that, or if you're okay getting rid of the ratio, meaning the taxes could be higher than they would be under Gallagher, but it could also create more funding issue for all those agencies. How I can say that in 45 seconds, let alone a minute and a half, I'm amazed.
This November, Colorado faces a choice between courage and cowardice. When you go to choose a news anchor, ask yourself this: why is Kyle Clark hiding in his basement? Real news anchors broadcast from the studio, where the lights and background give them extra credibility and stuff. But Kyle Clark cowers in his basement, sending coded messages with the arrangement of his woodpile. What's he hiding? I'll tell you what: shorts. He's wearing shorts. This November, choose a news anchor with the credibility provided by studio lighting. Choose a news anchor with pants. Paid for by news anchors who are mad they have to wear pants to the studio.
If you ever find yourself on Jewel in southwest Denver, maybe you've seen Paul, the guy who walks the avenue showing his support for the troops. Paul Schroeder's done that for 7 years with his dog at his side. Public show of patriotism, a way to lift up his neighbors, who recently repaid that kindness.
Walking's great. It's one of the wonderful things you can do for yourself, and you don't get traffic tickets.
Many people probably don't know Paul by name, but they know him by the guy walking down the street.
Hi, my name is Paul Schroeder. I live in the Harvey Park neighborhood. I take my sign from my house, I walk down the street, and I do this to give people the opportunity to honk their horn, to see that there are people out there who do care about them.
Paul and I have been neighbors for 4 years. This is a daily thing. I'm talking 3 to 4 times a day. He's walking the streets. He's lived alone the whole time that I've known him with his dog, Makita.
I had this wonderful dog for 12 years, and she got sick Friday and passed away.
She passed away in the vet's office, so there was no suffering involved, but he's suffering.
Think about it. I mean, it's a bittersweet emotion. My memories of my dog are always going to be sweet. Right now it might be a little bitter, or even quite a bit bitter, but the bitter part will go away, and all you'll be left is with the sweet.
You know, I've never seen Paul shed a tear until that day, and that's what drew me in to do as much as I could to help him. I'm trying to raise money for the vet bills that she left behind, and then maybe put a little more food on his table, you know, because he did spend every dime trying to save her life.
And even if I couldn't respond to you right at that time without hardly choking up, your comfort means more to me than I can appreciate.
I feel like it's our job as a community, after he's done so much for us, to give back to him.
That's wonderful. Your feedback and my response to that shameful attack next. We've been talking this week about how some law enforcement around Colorado have started ticketing people for expired tags again. The pandemic grace period is over. Do respect the hustle, though, of the driver spotted by Avi on South Broadway in Littleton last week. Just a straight-up homemade license plate telling officers that they bought that Honda on July 2nd. It's a nice personal touch, I think. Gary Kryzak writes in tonight, just saw the Kyle Clark hiding in his basement piece. Haven't laughed that hard since COVID started. It was great. I don't share your view, Gary. Tom Anderson writes to simply say, shorts. Let me say this very clearly. I do own pants.